Whether you're here because you're a company executive, an HR leader, a department head, or a team manager, you're here because you know that your organization's health and your team's engagement is vital to the success of your business. It's all connected, from hiring and keeping great people to ensuring customer satisfaction. Organizational health isn't a set it and forget it proposal. It needs to be managed and incorporated into your strategy and culture in a meaningful way. So we all know that engaged employees and efficient processes are the basis for success. The employee lifecycle is a key component of an organization's health. So when assessing the employee lifecycle, there are two basic questions we're looking to answer. Are we doing the right things? And are we doing things right? So a little bit about me. I'm Sarah Catherine Schmidt, and I'm a fractional VP of People, Employee Experience Advocate, and Certified Executive Coach. I've spent the majority of my career in early to mid-stage technology startups and consultancies, and I'm passionate about helping to build and coach high-performing teams. And I've led people operations teams to develop scalable talent programs over the last 15 years. I want to start with a little bit of a story. I attended my first people analytics conference back in 2019. I had always been passionate about data and how it could drive tremendous results on the people side of things, prevent attrition, promote engagement, and make sure that organizations were scaling healthily. And so when I went to this conference, I was really amazed at all of the cool things that companies were doing. But those were big companies, and they had really massive workforces and resources to help them build their people analytics function. And so I really wanted to align with an organization that democratized people data and made it so that they didn't have to have a ton of data scientists behind their insights. And I believe strongly that people operations professionals and HR professionals have the context that is so valuable about the organization. And so it's about marrying the actionable data that you have to scale your team and grow engagement. So these are our workshop objectives. The primary element that supercharges organizational health is data. And that's data that, when looked at and analyzed specifically to see relationships and communications, productivity and visibility within and between teams, provides insights to empower leaders at all levels to make informed, impactful, and ideally unbiased data-driven decisions. So you just need to harness that information and capitalize on the insights it can provide. So in this workshop, we're going to examine all of these things. We're going to look more closely at why organizational health is so important and what you can do to operationalize the data that you have for meaningful engagement management and actions to move your business forward. So it's all about leveraging data to make informed decisions, and we'll get started. So what is organizational health? Organizational health is an organization's ability to unite around a shared vision and adapt to changes to meet company goals. In other words, it's your company's capacity to adapt to the world that is ever changing and constantly evolving. And when it comes to assessing organizational health, I think about my Apple Watch and my fitness rings. Side note, this was not a great day for my fitness rings, but when we think about organizational health, it can be conceptualized as fitness rings, for your business, where you're focusing on people, process, and technology. And so with that metaphor in mind, here's what that looks like. Build high-performing teams. Build processes that make you more efficient. Implement technology that drives data-driven decision-making. And then leverage that data and your technology and tools to scale. So just like my personal fitness rings tell me when I need to move, stand, burn more calories, your organizational health fitness rings indicate whether you can move quickly, assess risks, and make decisions that lead to growth, innovation, and increased profits. And so the companies that can anticipate changes and be proactive in addressing them are the most healthy. So when you understand and prioritize your organizational health, you help your organization respond to challenges and capitalize on those opportunities in a changing business environment. And I want to highlight that 20% of employee turnover happens within 45 days. So when we look at this metric, a similar metric used to say 90 days, actually. And our time to engage new hires has been cut in half. So when we think about 20%, let's say you have a 100-person organization. The average turnover in a technology company is 13.2%. So the cost of each one of those 13 resignation letters ranges from 1/2 to twice the employee's annual salary, depending on the role. So you could be looking at a $1.5 million replacement cost, according to Society of Human Resources. But if you're able to drive high organizational health, you can see 3x returns due to enhanced performance. So we're going to talk about that here today. And now that we understand a little bit more about organizational health, let's dig into how organizational health impacts various stages of the employee life cycle, because it all starts with a meaningful employee experience. This is how many of us, especially in the HR world, view the employee life cycle stages. And within each of these stages is both qualitative and quantitative data that can tell you how healthy your organization is. Many people leaders actually fear that data will dehumanize the employee experience and the value that HR brings. But if you flip this on its head, what if you view data as the greatest asset that you could bring? Data doesn't supplant the organizational context that you have, it supports it. And data can tell you where to go and help you get there. And so data really gets HR a seat at the strategic table. Speaking of data, HR has access to an ever-increasing amount of data. Pulling in connected sources of data within the organization really helps you to reduce bias and helps you understand the relationship between engagement and performance. So I've categorized HR data sources into 3 groups. The first is what we're most comfortable with and know well enough, which is HRIS data. And so this is data from your system that has most of your company's data about your employees. Common examples are Workday, Oracle, SAP. TriNet or your PEO can also be considered your HRIS if you're on the smaller side. But then you have all of your other HR data that's essential for data-driven decision-making, but isn't in your HRIS necessarily. And so that data is often acquired through surveys or other measurement techniques. And then you layer on top the business data. We can't name all of the business data that you have. It's exhaustive, but it plays an increasingly key role in people analytics when we think about stitching together the data and the fabric of your organization. And then we have spreadsheets. Love them, hate them. This is where a lot of HR professionals live. And so really, it's about trying to stitch together the data from various systems, which can be really overwhelming. And so today, really want to use the opportunity to break it down into chunks. So let's start with the first phase of the employee life cycle, which is attract. Your ability to attract qualified candidates strongly depends on your employee value proposition, or EVP. This is the unique set of benefits that an employee receives in return for the skills, capabilities, and experience that they're bringing to your company. And so an EVP is about defining the essence of your organization and how it's unique and what it stands for. And the components of a strong EVP include your compensation philosophy. So thinking about that, are you competitive relative to the market? When you're tuning into the market regularly, you can adjust where needed versus being left behind. And we've all experienced that, particularly over the last year and a half, as the broader global market has shifted, but also very much so the recruitment market. Looking at your benefits, are you offering benefits that candidates and employees find attractive and useful? Or are they out of alignment with what your workforce needs? I call those sort of like vanity benefits, where they're not fully leveraged, but they're sort of there with like a shiny halo. Career, based on an employee's growth goals or a candidate's growth goals, can they see themselves carving out a path that nurtures their development and growth? And then when we think about work environment, even in a hybrid or remote world, candidates want a work environment that's supportive, allows for building connections, and more than anything else is inclusive. And that's whether you're in person and you have water cooler conversations, or whether you're hybrid and you sort of get to see people on occasion, or whether you're completely remote. The work environment goes with you. Your culture, finally, there's so many different definitions for culture out there. But I learned this from someone that I worked with previously, and I really embody this. Your culture is about your rituals and ceremonies and the way employees, regardless of title or level, really treat one another. And so that's everything from communication to collaboration and connection. So bottom line, when you have a strong EVP, you're increasing organizational health. How? Organizational health improves during a transformation when companies embrace fresh ideas. Sometimes that means looking outside for best practices to help innovate and invigorate the business. And so attracting diverse talent across multiple demographics is a proven way to increase the flow of ideas and challenge incremental thinking and, frankly, the status quo. So I have talked a lot, and what I want to do is give us a chance to workshop it a little bit. So let's get our brains churning and put some pen to paper. I want you to take a minute and jot down yes, no, or maybe to the following 5 questions around your EVP. And this is just for you, so be honest in your reflection, because this is the basis for what you'll take away from this workshop, hopefully. So, when it comes to compensation, are you benchmarking yourself against the market on compensation? Yes, no, maybe. There's no judgment here. The opportunity is there, but wherever you are, it's a question you should ask yourself. On benefits, are you offering a competitive total rewards package? Total rewards is defined as everything in addition to compensation, your medical, dental, vision, your supplementary life, your wellness perks and benefits, your hybrid work stipend, your professional development program. Those all encompass your total rewards. So are you offering something that's competitive to the market and something that your business can sustain? Career. I phrase this as how are you nurturing talent and offering a path to advancement? But the question in a yes, no, maybe is, are you nurturing talent and offering a path to advancement? And what does that look like? Is your work environment inclusive and fostering of innovation? This is how you drive positive intellectual friction within your workforce versus social friction that can deplete and derail your culture. You want to make sure that everyone feels a sense of belonging and feels like they can test and try and fail, but learn and fail fast. And then culture. What differentiates your culture and core values from other companies? Or do you offer a differentiated culture compared to other companies? So I'll give you a minute to do a yes, no, maybe on each of these. And then your homework after this workshop on the differentiated culture, jot down how and in what ways you differentiate yourselves. So the last piece of this exercise is to star the component of your EVP that you feel is strongest right now. Star that one. And then circle the component of your EVP that is the greatest area of opportunity for you. And then here's some additional homework. How are you presenting your EVP as an employer of choice on your website, your job boards, social media, any place that candidates can find you? Because once you have a clear EVP, you've got to test it and see what candidates come into your funnel and understand how they're finding you. And that's where we'll move to the recruit phase. You really want to attract a diverse set of candidates from many different sources, because without that focus on diversity at the top of the funnel, your organization risks being homogenous. But once you've found those candidates, get them into the process. Recruiting will never not be about the candidate journey and experience. So we want to measure what matters here. And your organizational health really depends on a consistent process by which you engage and evaluate candidates. And so when it comes to this candidate journey, look at your interview stages first and foremost. Do you have enough? Too many stages? How long are candidates spending in each stage? Is there perhaps a people, process, or technology barrier within the length of your hiring process? At my last company, we were losing candidates at the assessment stage. They didn't need to complete a coding challenge or skills exercise. There were 5 other companies that would hire them without that. So I encourage you, if you notice a trend in your data, whether it's recruitment or otherwise, be curious and think about how you can still get the information you need while acknowledging the external forces that are at play. And in the case of my last company, we ended up training our interviewers to ask more pointed questions and do virtual whiteboarding sessions with thought prompts in the interview conversation itself. And so that helped us shorten that candidate journey, but still get the information that we needed to make a qualified hire. And then we have the candidate experience, which is a quantitative metric that can indicate the health of your processes and the people who manage them. So this is your CNPS. Ideally, your applicant tracking system enables you to run some sort of post-interview survey at whatever stage that candidate made it through, so that you know if that candidate would recommend the company based on their experience. So you can calculate that CNPS, ideally through your ATS. In addition to your candidate journey and experience, there are all the metrics and measures to look at routinely, such as funnel metrics, source of hire, time to fill, qualified candidates per hire, and your offer acceptance rate. So these are sort of the top line that I would measure in terms of what matters. I want to speak briefly to qualified candidates per hire. Qualified candidates can be defined based on what you set within your organization as a standard. So it can be the number of candidates that pass your initial screening process, such as a resume screening, candidates that pass the phone screen stage or an initial interview stage based on your pipeline. And so in turn, that metric, qualified candidates per hire, refers to the average number of candidates who were found to be qualified in the hiring process. And this is an interesting metric that I like to speak to because I began tracking it at my last company to help our recruiter and hiring managers go a level deeper into their recruitment process data. And truthfully, I was hearing a lot of, we don't have enough qualified candidates in the pipeline. I'm sure you all have heard that. So we defined a way to actually turn that from gut feeling into data. And with this metric, we were able to strike a balance and understand that if it was a lower qualified candidate metric, then we weren't filling the funnel with the right people, and we needed to broaden that funnel and our reach. And then if we saw that there was an influx of candidates for a particular role and it was higher than average, we made sure not to pull in so many candidates through the funnel that we would prolong our hiring process. And so that's where it gets to be a little bit of an art, a little bit of a science. But I want to look at other recruitment data that helps you understand how healthy your organization is. Your funnel data can tell you a lot about how healthy you are, because healthy organizations know how to get from point A to point B and so on. And so in recruitment, we call it a funnel, and it can show you a complete picture of how healthy your recruitment process is. This funnel looks different for every company. Sometimes there's an assessment stage or a skills exercise. I put checking references here because that can often slow down your bottom of funnel, even though it's likely part of your regular process. So when you're looking at these metrics, total pipeline, conversions through the funnel, offer acceptance, and who you're hiring from in terms of your source, I want you to take a minute, and I'm going to pause and take a beat, because I want you to jot down first which one of these metrics you track today. Maybe it's all of them, maybe it's some of them. Which ones do you track today? And then, which ones do you want to track that you aren't today? And finally, I have another yes, no, maybe question for you. Does your applicant tracking system help or hinder your hiring process and data-driven decision-making? I remember the first time my COO asked me to present all of these metrics. I was doing outbound sourcing on all 7 of our roles, and naturally, LinkedIn wasn't connected to our applicant tracking system. And so I was meticulous about my tracking spreadsheet, and it was not only to show my hard work, but to be more data-driven about how we converted candidates. And so I knew, in an analogy, if I kissed 10 okay frogs in terms of candidates, I could get to my ideal candidate or my prince or princess. And so this funnel data is part of crawling and understanding the data that you have at your fingertips and starting to build data literacy and alignment on what you want to track. So let's shift from our candidate experience becoming our new hire experience, because you've landed a new hire or cohort of new hires, and that's really exciting. I imagine if you're back to in-person onboarding, you may be doing this in a different way, but a lot of companies I partner with are geographically distributed, and virtual onboarding is frankly still really hard. And so regardless, your metrics should still drive your onboarding program. And while HR can craft an organizational onboarding program and run 30 and 60-day 90 feedback surveys and ensure the new hire has organizational context, managers should also have co-ownership of the role of onboarding and help maximize time to productivity. So I want to focus on this because this is one of the harder metrics to track, but is so essential as a check and balance to opening a role, closing a role, and bringing a person on board. So when you open a requisition for a new role, your hiring manager should know the answer to the question, after what time do you expect your new team member to reach full productivity in their role? I'll say it again. After what time do you expect your new team member to reach full productivity in their role? If hiring managers don't know the answer to this question, it's perhaps a coaching moment to help them better understand how to calculate that. And so the first step is really about understanding the expected output goals at the 30, 60, and 90-day intervals to better track success and areas of improvement within your onboarding process. And at the 90-day mark or before, your manager should feel confident in the new hire's skills, knowledge, and abilities, which indicates a good quality of hire. But how do you, as an HR professional or a people manager, help drive these metrics in a positive direction? So having a structured onboarding process that provides context on the organization and an individual's role and impact is critical to employee engagement. We know this. So the question is, are you providing new hires with context and clarity to be successful in their role? These are some key questions your onboarding program should likely answer for new hires. As I bring these up, I want you to think about which of these questions you answer for your new hires and your onboarding processes today, and which ones perhaps you don't. And that's okay. Area of opportunity. The goal of organizational health at this life cycle stage is being able to track which new hires are integrating into the organization and which ones aren't, and why. There are a variety of ways to gather data in your onboarding process. I've talked about the 30, 60, 90, but whether you're getting it through surveys or more passive measures, understanding how your new hires are fitting into the organization is really essential. And something called organizational network analysis, those graphs can show you in real time how interactions and connectivity broaden within your organization as a new hire onboards. And so they're really valuable insights, but I can't emphasize enough the role that managers play in the employee lifecycle overall. And so when it comes to onboarding specifically, your manager should have enthusiasm about welcoming and integrating someone new and helping you as a partner in developing a program that successfully integrates new hires. So I want to talk more about people managers when it comes to the develop stage of the life cycle, which is next. I want to first bring in some data. An employee with a better engaged manager is 58% more likely to be engaged themselves. An engaged employee feels happier, more confident in their role, is more likely to drive innovation within your business and perform better. And so companies with talented managers see a 48% increase in profitability. And then managers who are not engaged on the other side or are actively disengaged cost the US economy at least $300 billion annually. And all of these are from Gallup's State of the American Manager survey. But really the takeaway here is that management requires a strong set of soft skills that may not have been needed or refined in a manager's previous role. And those skills are ever evolving. So who would have considered that empathy was such a key skill for managers and leaders to have? But the pandemic introduced empathy as a key skill, as like something that is absolutely essential in meeting people where they are. And so a manager's performance really has a compounding impact, right? And so identifying your great managers in alignment with your core values and expectations can help you model that behavior for others within that manager cohort. And this is the entire reason that I started my consultancy. I witnessed great companies promoting from within, but not giving those high-performing individual contributors the training to be successful as managers. And this is a natural challenge as we have really great people, but we scale a company. But when my CEO would come to me frustrated and ready to put someone on a performance improvement plan or flat out just sort of separate with them, I would say, we can't get mad at them for not knowing if we haven't taught them. And so I'd love to hear from you all in the Q&A, probably is the best way since we're having some issues with our chat. But I'd love for you all to post some of the top skills you're training your managers on today, because I'm really curious what you all are focused on in terms of making those investments in your people managers. So Post in the chat and let us know what the top skills are that you're training your managers on today. Measuring the ROI of training is one of the hardest things that we as HR professionals actually are working on right now, and knowing whether the training is effective, honestly. And so you have a number of quantitative data points that you can gather to indicate the strengths and focus areas of development within your manager population. I'm going to check the Q&A. Thank you, Lauren. Team building via retreats, team norms, and rituals. Yes, absolutely. These are some of the essentials around communication, right? How we engage with one another, how we collaborate with one another. And it's often overlooked, especially in a virtual environment, but that's actually where it's most needed. So thank you, Lauren. Appreciate you. But in terms of the data that can tell you whether or not your training is effective, performance review data, top line. I used to keep a massive spreadsheet with every ranking, rating, comment from each performance review cycle. I could pull out themes in the feedback, group our managers by ratings, so much data there. But you also have employee survey data. And so when you're asking the right questions, not only about the organization as a whole, but manager effectiveness in particular, you get some really great insights into what's working and what's not. What I've seen work really well recently is your learning management system data. And even if you're using a lightweight learning management system to track skills development over time, that can help you understand a plan for things like promotions and succession, not only within your manager population, but also within your individual contributor population. And then finally, your exit interview data. So we'll look at this a little bit later as well, but manager correlations within your leaver population are incredibly valuable in helping you point back to the skills that you need to continue to develop. But while you're developing your managers, you've also got to grow your people and show them a path. So this is a more intricate graph and visual, but recently I've worked with a lot of early stage companies in like the 30 to 75 people range, and their team is asking what's next. So this visual is about movement and growth within an organization. And we can blame a particular generation for wanting that career path, or we as organizations can embrace growth and learning. And so organizational health at the develop stage isn't about just creating those paths to career growth. It's deeper and more nuanced. So the critical processes that you should have in place are something called iterative performance management. Iterative performance management is a response to the modern dynamic of the market that demands adaptability and alignment. Honestly, I think you all are probably seeing this, but it's more frequent feedback loops and check-ins, in addition to our traditional sort of like 360 feedback and appraisals that really promotes flexibility, autonomy, and ownership, and that continuous communication and culture of feedback. So it is about building that culture of feedback into your people processes. And as you have those check-ins around growth and development, you can begin to see where you need to invest in your people. I love professional development programs, even if they are small, even if it's $400 a year. Professional development programs don't have to be complex when you start. Maybe it's an annual stipend to attend conferences or workshops, but whatever aligns with your role is valuable to help you build internal skills and abilities within your workforce. Because again, to go back to that replacement cost, it's far more. So when you're thinking about that next step in professional development, maybe along the journey, you implement a learning management system like we talked about before, and begin tracking metrics similar to what you're doing with your managers. And so as you measure performance and build skills, you naturally get to a place where you're promoting individuals, you're monitoring promotion rates, merit increase rates, organizational structure evolves, and then you start to look at internal compensation equity. Every time you make an adjustment to a salary or hire in someone new, your compensation equity can shift. And so pay equity is a whole other workshop in and itself. But we all know that employees and the world are paying close attention to closing decades of pay gaps. And so developing your people is more of a holistic program around processes, programs, as well as data. So when we think about engaging people in the process in your organization, we can measure engagement through many mechanisms. It doesn't just mean surveys. A lot of individuals get survey fatigue. HR is curating surveys all the time and processing that data and needs time to formulate initiatives. But really, it comes back to companies that make the biggest gains on health. Make sure that they go the extra step to align day-to-day behavior with the company's mission and vision and strategy. And so what I love about this graphic is the organizational mindset and the impediments to engagement, as well as the drivers. And a lot of these impediments actually come down to your people managers. A lot of the drivers do as well. One thing I love around engagement is Patrick Lencioni's book, The Truth About Employee Engagement. If you have not read it, please go out and buy it. I think last time I saw it, it was like $11 on Amazon, but it's a fable. And so it's an easy read. But the book talks about what causes job misery and how managers can help employees have a fulfilling job. And with any fable, it has a model as well as the fable. And so the model talks about these three factors that cause job misery. And anyone who wants to be understood doesn't want to be anonymous within an organization. And so all humans really want to be appreciated for their unique qualities that they bring, preferably by someone of authority, but by general, the population. So anonymity, as an employee, if you see yourself as invisible, generic, or anonymous, it doesn't necessarily mean that you love your job, no matter what you're doing. And then without seeing the connection to your work and satisfaction of yourself, another person, or a group of people, there's not that lasting fulfillment when it comes to feeling irrelevant and feeling like your work matters. And then finally, immeasurement. And this is where we get into the data and goals and how we connect everything back from engagement all the way to profits. Everyone should be able to gauge their progress and level of contribution by themselves without depending on the opinions of another person. So tangible means of assessing the success or failures means motivation. When an individual knows that they are measured and that they are accountable, they actually increase their engagement. And so they think about that in terms of their personal goals as well as the company goals. And that's where things like SMART goals and OKRs actually align really quickly and closely with making sure that there's a strategy around how you achieve your strategic objectives all the way down. So our final stage is separate. Within the employee lifecycle, this is not a stage that we love to get to, honestly. But if one of your high performers goes out and gets their dream job, you've got to celebrate that. But there's an iceberg illusion within all of the departures within your organization. Recruiting cost, onboarding cost, and training investment is what we see above the iceberg. And I love this image because there's so much underneath. I've seen icebergs in person. They're really phenomenal. You don't even know how far down they go. But when you think about that in terms of someone leaving your organization, there's so much around loss of trust and disengagement, that institutional knowledge and the skills shortage that you ultimately have to shore back up when you go and recruit. So when we think about this stage, it really is about monitoring your annual or your trailing 12-month attrition rate. I spoke to the 13.2% in technology companies earlier, but that's a rate that you really want to pay attention to. in addition to your exit interview data. So I appreciate all the CEOs and managers who want to run exit interviews. Please let HR do it. That's how we can connect the data. There's also just a psychological element of taking a departure personally that's really difficult for someone to work through. And that's where HR and people operations can really be a thought partner there and make sure that we're running themed exit interviews and gathering trend data, understanding what's regrettable versus non-regrettable turnover, and then really going back to, is there a manager correlation within this departure? Do I need to look back at performance review data, employee engagement data? What can I pull in to understand why this manager might have more departures than normal? And same for the department. It's possible to understand linkages across your business through your exit interview data, in addition to everything else that you collect along the employee lifecycle. And so ultimately, everyone here is likely to want to improve decision outcomes by unifying your people and business data. And it doesn't matter where you're starting, honestly, just start. And so this is what it could look like to stitch together your organizational health data in terms of the metrics that we've looked at over the course of our time here today, approximately 45 minutes. So attract, recruit, onboard, develop, engage, separate. These are some of the metrics that you could track initially to help you know the health of your business and to connect those data sources, whether it's your HRIS, whether it's your other HR data that's in disparate systems, or whether it really pulls in some of your business data. All of these pieces help you understand what organizational health data looks like in practice. And so based on an organization's maturity curve, it's the expectation that not all organizations will have some of these processes and programs in place today. And I stole this statement from my husband. You can't eat the elephant in one bite. I love elephants, but you've got to think about it in phases. In the crawl phase, you simply don't know what you don't know. As a result, this phase is all about gathering knowledge. Good data will show how different departments, teams, and branches experience the organization. Having data is the first step to better people and culture decisions, and meaningful data helps the right people ask the right questions at the right stages. And so understand the data that you have and where you don't. And the aim is really at the crawl stage to also get your people more comfortable with seeing and understanding culture data regularly. My last leadership team would spiral on a week's worth of pulse survey data, and this was disruptive and led to short-term actions that didn't account for the long-term engagement of the workforce. And so really the opportunity is to align on the metrics that are most important to driving your business. And then if your business works on a quarterly budgeting or reporting cycle, that's how often you should update your people and culture data. And in your walk phase, it's time to connect that data with the way your business already runs. And so it's impossible to make meaningful changes on the back of data from a single data point, as I mentioned, without really making sure that you understand and have people data culturally embedded into your organization and deployed for analysis and decision making. So when you have the broad awareness throughout the business of the meaning and importance of people data, this is really where you can start to use the data to start driving programs and initiatives to improve the employee experience. And in designing any initiative, you've got to be intentional about not only the outcome that you're trying to achieve, but really what experiments you will design to measurably improve the culture. And so because business and people and data are embedded together, you can create some feedback loops around this and better create some cultural outcomes. And ultimately, in the run stage, you want to have data collected throughout the employee lifecycle to drive decision-making throughout the organization. And that's where you run. And you get to bring data to the table at every turn. So that's a little bit or a lot of bit for our time together. I do want to talk a little bit about people logic and how we deliver value from Series A to pre-IPO. So this is the organizational maturity curve, and people logic can help increase organizational health regardless of where you are on your journey. Our customers and our products span the entire organizational maturity curve, as you can see here, from the earliest stages where you're just getting into data and data-driven decision-making to where you're continuously optimizing based on your data. And as companies scale, People Logic is here with additional tools to help you with the exact stage that you are, ensuring that you have the best chance for success. And so we're here to help you get started and offer consultative services to help you map out your organizational health journey. And that's really all I have. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our workshop.